Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are so grateful. Thank you so much for joining Out of the Box, a conversation about the future of school. Our session this afternoon is going to be about one of my absolute favorite topics that I feel really grateful to have gotten the chance to be close to over the number of years. We're going to talk about student voice and the future of schooling. I am joined by one of my favorite people on earth, my co-moderator. I'll let him introduce himself in a moment, David. Hi, David. We'll just wait for the people. Hi, David. David and I work at Transcend. We work with school communities all across the country who want to reimagine their learning environments for young people so that they can have extraordinary and equitable experiences. And we know that so many of you here today are also in pursuit of that work. I head up our learning team, and last year we were given the awesome task of thinking through, a couple of years ago, we were given the task of thinking through what can we be doing to get young people's voices at the table as we are thinking about all the ways we might reimagine school? And so with my colleague, David, we've done some work in developing some tools, which we'll share with you a little bit later, in talking to young folks ourselves. And so we're so excited to bring that here to you today. You're also going to see a box in your screen with the name Emily Sanchez. Emily, can you give us a wave? Emily is a young person. She is joining us from North Grand High School in Chicago. She's a sophomore, and we're going to talk to Emily a little bit later in our discussion. But now I will turn it to my dear colleague, David, to intro himself. Hi, David, turning it to you.
Hey, Jenee. Hey, everybody. It's so good to be here with y'all. And always fun to be alongside my good friend, Jenee. I have been at Transcend for a little bit over 3 years and lead our work related to data measurement and evidence. And so I'm really excited to be able to share about some of the tools that we've built to help communities gather evidence in the form of voices of young people about their experiences in school, and also share some of the trends over the last year. Here's what we've heard from the communities that we've worked with. I've talked to young people, big picture trends across the country and the kind of experiences they're having. So super jazzed to be here with y'all.
Thanks so much, David. So you all will go ahead and dive in. So I think as of, 2 weeks ago, our government might officially say we are no longer in a pandemic, pandemic's behind us, move forward. But we all know in the education sector that the pandemic had such a profound influence and impact, particularly in our young people. Some of the headlines here just show all the ways in which the pandemic, in which school closures, in which this new way we all had to operate, this new way of being, has impacted our young people. We hear that young folks are having severe mental health challenges, that school can feel overwhelming. We're seeing headlines that some parents are either choosing to take their young people out of the public system altogether or pursue, some sort of hybrid orientation. We're hearing that teens in particular are experiencing their own version of, I quit, I'm not doing this anymore. And then we're also seeing some, pretty disturbing figures in our reading and our math proficiency, from all across, but particularly from our young people who are most marginalized. So while we are, putting both feet into the future, moving on past the pandemic, we think it's really important for us to ground in some of the things that happened as a result. When we think about reimagining school, we come to that conversation from the lens of communities. We think that communities have an outsized and important role in really guiding where school might go for their young people. But oftentimes when we do that, we often forget to have young people themselves at the table. And they bring so many critical, so many important perspectives that we think matter for that design process. So the last 2.5, 3 years, have really exacerbated and made apparent, maybe for those of us who might be less involved with schools day to day, that there are just some deeply entrenched inequities and experiences that exist and need to change for our young people. And what if we were to ask ourselves, what if young people themselves have real insight on where we might go? And so the focus of what we're going to bring to you all today is what we have called our Conversations with Kids work, which David will talk a little bit more about. But this is some of the why. So I wanted to spend time in really grounding us in the experience of young people today. On the next slide, I want to introduce you. I am so saddened that he's not here because Ali is just so spectacular. But Ali is a student that we have. He's in one of our, one of our partner communities. We work with him, and he graduated from a high school in North Carolina recently, and he said a quote that just really stopped me in my tracks. And I'll read it for you now as you look on the screen. So this is what Ali had to say about student voice. As we consider what learning can look like for my generation and those to come, I hope more schools will take the time to walk a mile in the shoes of their students and redesign the school day with them in mind. To be better, schools must ask the right questions of their community and make changes based on the responses. This starts with listening to us. So with that charge and those wise words from Ali, we want to you how we have worked with our school communities and others to really listen to young people. I'm going to turn it over to David, who's going to talk about a little bit about how we've done that and what we've learned.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jenee, for that amazing introduction. So starting in the fall of 2021, we at Transcend invited communities to use a set of tools that we created to make it easier for them to listen directly to the young people that they serve. We created a conversation guide to help them do interviews and focus groups, a reflection guide to then help them make sense of what they were hearing and have a framework for processing it, and then also a validated survey that would allow them to get input from lots and lots of young people on a big scale, broader than they could through just focus groups and interviews. Over the course of the last school year, so fall 2021 to spring 2022, our partner communities listened to a little bit over 20,000 young people using these tools to ask them about their experiences. And so we're excited to be able to share some of what they heard. Spoiler alert, at the end of the session today, we'll be sharing all of these tools in case you want to use them with your own communities. But first, we'll share a little bit more about those 20,000 young people, kind of who they were and how they were distributed. And so what you see here is that they were broadly representative of students across the country as a whole, but disproportionately sampling students of color. So about 23% of those 20,000 students were Black or African American, about 35% Latinx or Hispanic, which is disproportionately slightly higher than the national average. The vast majority of the students whom our partners talked to were in traditional district environments, which generally reflects where the vast majority of young people are going to school today. And then we had students across the grade range from 3rd grade through 12th grade, disproportionately middle schoolers in that grade 6 through 8 range, but also some in upper elementary and then some in high school. We did an experiment. We tried adapting some of the tools, particularly the survey, for 1st and 2nd graders. It was a spectacular non-success. And so the data we have is really from grade 3 through 12. And there were, as we listened to young people, 6 big themes that came through in what they told our partner communities and what they told us. The first is that most young people say that their experiences in school feel irrelevant to them and offer few opportunities for agency and choice. So some specific data points there: only 31% of young people said that what they learn in school is connected to life outside the classroom. Only 35% say that they get to learn about things they're interested in. Only 29% say that they have a say about what happens to them in school, get to make meaningful choices. And then 31% say that they can choose how to do their work. We feel like this is really important, meaningful data for 2 reasons. Number one, because these are experiences that just all human beings in this world deserve, right? All human beings in all contexts deserve to be able to engage in activities that are relevant to them, that are meaningful to them, to have a meaningful say in what's happening to them all day long. And then in addition to that, the learning science, a huge body of research, tells us that these things are really strong predictors of learning outcomes. So when young people have active self-direction and choice, when they're doing things that matter to them, and when they're doing things that feel relevant, those are very strong predictors of those learning activities then leading to new knowledge and skills and mindsets in the ways that we want them to. And so in finding 2, this is actually something that we found in our research as well. So we asked young people a question in the survey of, do you feel like you're learning a lot in school? And what we found is that when young people say, yes, I am held to high expectations in this environment. Yes, it's highly relevant. Yes, I have active self-direction and choice. And yes, I do rigorous work. They were 67% more likely to also say, yes, I am learning a lot in school. And then this third finding here was that many young people reported that their best experiences in school, the places that did feel relevant, the places that did feel rigorous, where they had choice, where they felt strong connection and community, actually happened outside of core academics. So it was not English class, it was not math class, it was in sports, it was in extracurriculars, it was in electives. And that those experiences were really inequitably distributed across some of the structural inequitable lines that we see in broader society. Research tells us that since the 1970s, upper middle class students have become increasingly active in school clubs, in sport teams, while participation from lower income families has decreased. That gap has expanded in parallel with rising income inequality nationwide, and also reflects the introduction of pay-to-play programs where, if you want to be part of this club, it's actually going to cost money, which is especially troubling given that young people are saying that it's those kinds of activities where they feel like they are having the experiences that are most likely to lead to learning and they enjoy the most and are affirming of themselves. We heard this qualitatively from our partners. So for example, one district leader, after interviewing a bunch of students, said, I heard different responses based on demographics. Students I spoke to from predominantly white campuses said they had lots of opportunities to make the world a better place and had great experiences outside of school. Students from lower socioeconomic status schools didn't have opportunities to make connections outside of school. That was the third big finding, big trend of what we heard from young people. The fourth, fifth, and sixth are going to show up here in this next slide. So the fourth that we heard is related to a subset of schools where, in addition to young people asking them about their experiences, we actually invited the adults in the community, families and teachers, to take the survey as well as a predictor of, what do you think the young people in your community are going to say? What do you think your students are going to say when asked about their experiences? We found in almost every case, adults overestimated what kids would say. So adults said, yeah, I think that it's pretty relevant. They're going to find it relevant. Young people said, no, it's not very relevant. Or adults said, yeah, I think that this feels like it's really customized and meeting each young person's needs. Kids are like, not so much. Like, you're kind of overestimating that. The one exception was questions about social consciousness and action, the degree to which young people are talking about, thinking about, taking action related to social inequities and injustices. In those cases, young adults actually underestimated the degree to which that was happening for kids. And so, this is obviously, in this moment in time, a very hot political topic among adults. And there's a very robust national debate about to what degree is it appropriate or desirable for schools to be a place where young people talk about and learn about and take action in response to historical and current social inequities. And what young people told us, based on their conversations with those, we're doing it anyway. Like, whether adults think that we should or not, whether adults think this should happen in school, like, this matters to us. And we are talking about racism. We are talking about social inequities when we're in school. And then these fifth and sixth findings here are connected to one another. The fifth is that adults often report that this activity of listening to young people and asking them about what school is like is dramatically helpful in helping them think about how to redesign school to make it better. And when they do have these conversations and do really partner with young people and ground in what is it like for you to be here at school, they can make really dramatic shifts in experiences. And the next slide has an example of what that looks like in one community that we partnered with. This is a community where they started out by surveying all of their young people, asking them about their experiences, and that light teal bar shows what they heard. So they heard that only 34% of young people said they get to learn about things that they're interested in. 28% of young people said they have a say about what happens to them. 46% of young people said they were learning a lot, and only 63% said they love school. And so what these folks did is they actually said, all right, we want to share these data back with the kids. So they invited kids in on a day off. They looked at the data together. Those young people then built a case for change for how school needed to be different. And they presented that back to their community. And then once that case for change caught fire and people reacted to it in a really positive way, the adults in the school invited the students to help co-design some new structures, some new learning experiences. And they built some really innovative and cool studio experiences where young people get to design their own projects and have choice about what they're learning and how they're going to engage in it. And so then those dark blue bars show the post data, show what young people said about their experiences after they implemented that new design. And so the big takeaway here for us is just a really exciting and optimistic one, that when educators and kids talk together, it's possible for them to co-design experiences that make really dramatic shifts in what it's like to be a student in a school, which we think just opens up all kinds of possibilities for the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, David. One of my favorite things in the world is listening to David Nitkin talk about data, because you bring such life and elegance to it. There are so many things that hit me in what you said. One thing that I think is so important that can often be difficult for us as adults to keep in perspective is the degree to which we assume for young people. When I think back to when I was a teacher, there were so many things that I think I assumed this lesson's going awesome. They're loving it. And it reminds me like, wow, did I ask enough? Did I reflect with them enough on what was going on? But then the positive thing that you said that I think is really exciting, and one of the reasons we're so excited to talk to Emily, is just like how much ownership, how much excitement, and what young people get from having a say in what happens to them. I think that that was a really powerful nugget. So thank you, David, so much for sharing a little bit of the facts and figures with us. All right, friends, for this next part of our discussion, we are going to talk to a young person themselves about the work that they have done in their own school community. And we're going to talk to Emily a little bit and learn about, Emily, some of your experiences working with the teachers in your school, working with other young people in your school, because we know that when young people have a voice in designing the experiences, that can matter so much for how they experience school and the outcomes they achieve. So Emily, let's do just a quick little introduction. So I'll have you just come off mute, Emily, and share with us, who you are, where you live, what grade you're in, what school you attend.
So hello, I'm Emily. Um, I live near Humboldt Park in Chicago. Uh, and I go to North Grand High School, and I am a 10th grade student.
Great. Overall, Emily, how do you feel about your school? You enjoy it?
I enjoy like some bits because like a lot of like school stuff. Like I enjoy like learning about stuff that like are really interesting and like creative and like you can like talk about them like forever. But something something that like I find really difficult is like wording of stuff.
Hmm. So when you say the wording, you mean like sometimes it's difficult to know what's going on because the words can be hard or hard to access. Is that right? What are some things, though, Emily? You said there were some things that you could talk about forever. What are some things that you could talk about forever that really excite you?
Okay, so like a lot of like history. Like history is like a very cool thing that I find that is like
Mm,
very interesting, and like since we haven't been like near like the past, like me personally, I haven't like gotten to the past. So like what would have happened if I was like at that time, and like
mhm.
would I be treated the same? Would I be treated different? How would that like affect how I am today?
I love that. So you're asking some of those questions that David shared with us, where you're thinking about what would my experience have been like at this point or that point. You and David will be friends because he's a history nerd and he loves it. Okay, Emily, thank you for getting warmed up and answering some of those questions. I want to talk to you a little bit about your capstone project. So I heard that you got to work with your teachers to co-create a plan for your capstone projects in seminar classes. Can you tell us more about what that was like?
Yes. So firstly, like the capstone project for seminar was um first of all like the rubrics was like very hard to read, um and so I talked about how we should like simplify it in a way that it still says the same information, but it's worded differently to a point where like the students can actually read it and like understand what they're saying without having to question every single step.
I love this. Like you're getting really technical, Emily. So you were looking at the language of the rubric and saying, I can access this. This has got to be easier for me to know, like whether I'm, a one or a two. So you really helped think about how are we actually going to be judging ourselves to know if we're successful. That's amazing. What else did you help do in this capstone project? And then, like, did you do a capstone yourself?
So I did do capstone myself, and another thing was that we got to choose what we wanted to search
Mm,
um for like our interest, and so
mhm,
what we did was like instead of like them giving us options,
mm.
we kind of like chose something that we're very interested in learning that we haven't learned about yet, and so we used the rubrics with like the information that we really wanted to learn about, and then use that for the project. So instead of like us choosing the, let's say, four options, we got to have we had to have infinite options of like whatever we wanted to learn about and like research.
Ooh, I love that. So what I'm hearing you say there is, you and your fellow students, you guys got choice. You got choice to figure out what's the thing that I'm really excited about. And rather than your teachers telling you, Emily, here are 5 things, choose one, you got to really think more infinitely about what you wanted to learn about. Is that right?
Yep.
That's awesome. I'm going to come back and ask you about what you learned about, but I want to ask you first, how did it feel to work with your teachers and adults in this way? Like, how did you feel about that? They were asking you your opinion. Like, whoa, how did you feel about that?
It felt very important. I was like, I'm strong.
Yeah, you felt strong. I love that. How come? What made you feel strong?
Well, usually like during classes, the teacher has the most power, and like
Mhm.
whenever you're working with the teacher, you're just like, I'm doing something. That's cool.
I love that. So it gave you some, I just saw you puffed up your chest a bit. It gave you some self-confidence. I used to feel that way too. I used to get to, well, I wasn't that cool, so I didn't get to design Capstone, but I used to hand out all of the papers and take them up after quizzes. And it made me feel like really good, which is totally dumb, but like I loved it and it made me feel smart. So I loved it. Okay. So it made you feel like strong and you got to participate a bit. Did it change your relationship with your teachers at all? Like, do you think about them differently?
Well, like not that different, but now I feel like more comfortable talking to them with like if I had problems or like if I was stuck on a question, I wouldn't have to be as scared as I would be before to just
Mm.
or like question something that like I didn't really understand about something.
So I'm hearing it like it deepened your relationship with them. You trust them a little bit more because you guys got to work on something together. Okay, let me ask you this. What did you do your capstone project on?
So my capstone was on art
Mhm.
because I really like the creativity you get from like whatever you want to design. And so um I use that with mental health. So
Hmm.
my group designed a capstone with art therapy.
Art therapy?
Mhm.
What did you learn about art therapy?
Um, so with art therapy, there's like many ways of showing, showing or like taking out your emotions.
Hmm.
That is not a hurtful nor like stressful thing to do.
Hmm.
So for me, I really like creativity and like hearing music and doing stuff. So like with art and like going into like your emotions
Hmm.
while drawing, you can like just do anything you want, and honestly, you'll just feel better because you're doing something with all that anger instead of taking it out on like in like very negative ways.
Hmm. Oh, I love that. So in your project, you really put like art and mental health together, and you all were learning about and finding new ways to like solve some of those big, internal harmful feelings and like putting that into art. And you got a choice. You got to choose that that was something you wanted to pursue. That's really powerful. Let me ask in our final question, Emily, would you recommend other teachers to do this with their students and why?
Yes, I would very much recommend this because it is a way of like learning something new about your students because most of the time you really don't know anything about them.
Mm,
And it's also like a creative and positive way of like letting letting the students have like a little bit of a break because like now they have instead of like doing something specifically about something like doing math, even though some people just don't like math. I personally like math, but like um within that, um you give the students a choice on whatever they want, and it like makes them more creative and pursue what they really like and enjoy.
mm. And that matters so much because you spend a lot of time at school. So it matters that you want to be learning and pursuing it. So for all of those of you sitting in the audience, there's so much that I just learned from Emily. A couple of things that are really sticking with me. One is that allowing and asking young people, what do you want to do? What do you want to learn can have such a powerful impact and make them feel strong and capable. So I'm hearing a lot about that, and that matters so much. And thank you for sharing that, Emily. The next thing I'm hearing is that it really increased a sense of connection and community between Emily and her teachers. Now she's in a place where she feels like, I know you more deeply, you know me more deeply. I can ask you questions when, as you mentioned, Emily, that sometimes the words, can be hard. The third thing I'm hearing is that you were actually really able to advocate for a personalization that you needed. So you shared at the top, sometimes the words can be a little difficult for you to know what they are. So you got to look at the rubric and say, how do I make this so that I can understand it? And I think that is such a powerful and important lesson that all educators should be thinking about and holding dear. So Emily, thank you so much for your time. You are such a wonderful example of what we are hoping folks walk away with, which is what you can really learn when you sit and have deep conversations with young people about their schooling and their experience. So thank you so much, Emily. I hope you all enjoyed hearing a little bit more about Emily's experiences. I'm going to pass it back to my colleague, David, who's going to close us out and give us a couple of resources for how you might bring this to life in your own community and context. David, back to you.
Thank you so much, Jenee, and thank you, Emily. That was just, it hit me in my head place and my heart place too, to be able to hear that story. And if you are being hit in those same places and you're saying like, I want to have conversations with young people in my community, like I want to be able to talk to people the way that Jenee talked to Emily and the way that like the adults in her school talked to Emily, well, we have a goodie bag for you that could be helpful. So I think it's being dropped in the chat right now, or it will be a second ago, this goodie bag. And what's in here is the full report with the data that I described, a set of reflection guides that you could use to go through that report and think about it with your community, a set of conversation guides to help you if you want to have interviews or focus groups with some structured questions and pre-mortems and just things that we know best practices from qualitative research. There's a link of if you say, hey, I want to take that survey. It's been validated, like it's been tested. That sounds good. How do I do that? There's next steps in there related to that, as well as an invitation to the Transcend community and network, where you can connect with other like-minded people and find your tribe of other folks who are talking about this and trying this out and bounce ideas off each other. So if you feel energized the way that I feel energized, that goodie bag has a lot of different kind of next steps you can take to continue doing this kind of work in your own context.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for joining these out of the box sessions. It's just been an absolute pleasure to get to meet and speak with you, Emily, and get the band back up together, David, and share this work with everyone. We are so excited by the potentiality of the work that we are doing. We're so excited for you all to keep learning about other models and how other models are really being designed to meet students' needs and experiences. And we hope that that's something that you're able to get for the rest from the rest of the day. And so go forth, have these conversations. You can even set yourself small little goals to talk to 2 or 3 young people a week, a month in your context. And we just promise that you will learn so much. There isn't any group, any community of teachers that we have put this in front of, educators more broadly, who have not come back and said, wow, I learned a lot more about student experience than I thought I did. And I have so much more information to make some really informed decisions about my young people's learning environment. I feel armed. So the strength that Emily was talking about, we also believe and know that educators feel that same strength when they are also engaging deeply with young people. So thank you so much for engaging in Out of the Box. It's just been a pleasure to be with y'all, and have a great evening. Bye.